Monster Hunter Stories 2 is an amazing game. I've put over 100 hours into just one playthrough. But let's be honest, it's had some frustrating moments. From tedious menus to confusing systems, there are several quality of life changes that need to be in Stories 3 if it wants to be the best Stories title. Today, I'm breaking down the improvements that would make Stories 3 the smoothest, most player-friendly experience yet. Some of these are relatively small changes, others are bigger changes, but all of them would make a huge difference. Let's dive in. Let's start with something that affects every single minute of gameplay: the UI and the menus. In Stories 2, accessing some basic features required way too many button presses. Do you want to swap your lead Monstie? You have to open the menu, go to lead Monstie, select the Monstie, confirm. Do you want to check your items? Go open the menu, check your items, scroll through the menu. It really does add up. But here's what I want to see in Stories 3. A quick access radial menu. We already see that in the previews for switching your lead Monstie, but I would like to see that expanded to be able to access items like healing and null berries and stuff like that. But games like Monster Hunter World and Wilds do this. Why not Stories? Speaking of menus, let's talk about inventory management. Stories 2 and Stories 1 item lists were cluttered and fairly clunky to navigate. You would have to scroll through multiple dozens of items looking for that one health potion or that one item that you need. Stories 3 needs auto sorting in more depth, but for example, let me favorite or pin important items so they always show at the top. And please give me a bulk sell option in more depth. The bulk selling we had in Stories 2 was kind of limited, in my opinion. I don't want to sell items slowly. And what if I want to sell half a stack or all but one item? And the biggest UI improvement I want to see, gene board clarity. The Rated channeling is already a fairly complex system. The UI shouldn't make it harder to navigate, right? Give me color-coded bingo lines that I can see at a glance so I know exactly what bonuses I'm getting without having to read into an extra menu. Show me a stat preview before I commit to transferring a gene. Like maybe show me what the average damage value would be against various types of monsters. And also maybe a recommended gene build system or a way to share your builds with other players or friends. That would be nice, wouldn't it? These might seem like fairly small changes, but when you're 50 plus hours into a save, these quality of life features can make a massive difference with just some small improvements. Now, let's talk about combat. Stories 2's turn-based battles are fun, but after your 50th fight against the same monster or same monster type, some of the animations can start to feel a bit repetitive. And I'm not alone in this. It's one of the most common complaints that I've seen from other players. The solution is simple and available right now: battle speed options. I would love to be able to see an expansion upon that system, where you can maybe skip basic animations, but allow full animations and kinship skills to always play through at regular speed, because those are a much more rare type of damage that you do. They're not something that you do all the time, like speed attack, tech attack, power attack. There is options that you can do, like 2 or 3 times speed when you're playing solo and you can control it. However, in co-op play though, the speed is forced and synced between all players, which makes sense from a coordination standpoint, but it removes individual control over pacing. What would be ideal for Stories 3 is expanding upon this system, maybe in individual speed control, or even in co-op with like a vote system, or selective animation skipping. Let me speed through basic attacks that I've seen dozens and dozens and hundreds of times while still enjoying the more special moves, the new moves, at their regular speed. The foundation is already there in Stories 3. It just needs refinement. Target locking is another issue that I've seen somewhat. In Stories 2, it can be hard to track which enemy you're actually targeting sometimes, not always, especially in multi-monster fights. Stories 3 needs clearer visual indicators, maybe a brighter outline or a more obvious targeting reticle rather than just like changing the size a little bit or brightness a little bit. Make it more visually different, especially for accessibility. Let me quick switch between targets with a button press and not cycling through bumpers. Here's another big one for newcomers, attack type indicators. The rock, paper, scissors style combat is core to this game's combat system, but sometimes new players can struggle with it. What if Stories 3 showed you a color-coded prediction of what the enemy is likely to use? Not a guarantee, but maybe a hint based on their patterns. Veterans could toggle this off, but it would help new players learn the system faster. One more thing, damage previews. Let me see approximately how much damage my attack will do before I commit to it. Not exact numbers maybe, but a rough estimate would be nice. This would help me make better strategic decisions without having to memorize every single matchup. All right, let's talk about managing your Monsties, because while Stories 2 has made significant improvements to the Monstie roster and hatching system, the management interface still has room for growth when you're dealing with large collections of Monsties. Stories 2 does let you save up to 12 individual sets of parties for single player, which could help with basic organization. But Stories 3 could take this much further with maybe folders or teams of descriptive names. Like you could have a fire team or a elders team. You know, some stuff that help you have more optimal fights against specific types of monsters. Beyond just saving parties, we need robust filtering. Show me only Monsties that have a specific riding action like swimming or flying or rock break, or only Monsties that are above level 30, above level 50. Add a search option where we can type in a Monstie's name and go straight to the Monstie. The real game changer would be dynamic team swapping. While Stories 2 12-set system for parties works well in single player, you still need to return to town for major party changes. What if I could swap team presets directly from the menu without having to go all the way back to town? Maybe even game-suggested teams for specific quest types. For example, this quest has a lot of water-based monsters. Here are some Monsties that would do well against those. The egg management system also needs a bit of refining as well. While you can hatch and manage eggs in Stories 2, Stories 3 should let me compare eggs side by side with gene previews, stat potential, and rarity indicators. Maybe expand storage or allow auto transfer to the stable. These improvements would transform Monstie management from menu navigation into a genuine team building strategy. Let's also talk about traveling around the world, because Stories 2 had a few issues. Fast travel points were kind of limited in they were in a very specific area, and there was only a few per area, which meant that there was a lot of backtracking back and forth. You'd finish a quest on one side of the map, get a quest on the other side, and then sometimes you have to ride all the way back or a good chunk of the way back. It's not the end of the world, but it is tedious and repetitive. Stories 3 needs more fast travel waypoints, at least one per major area, definitely more. Here is what I really want. Fast travel from anywhere, not just from camps or towns or specific fast travel points, but from wherever I'm standing. Games like Breath of the Wild and Skyrim do this, and it's much more convenient. If you're worried about it feeling a bit too easy, make it so you can only fast travel to places you've already discovered. That way, exploration still matters, but you're not wasting time on unnecessary repetitive travel. Now, riding actions. In Stories 2, if you encounter an obstacle that needs rock break, but your current Monstie has jump, you have to switch your Monstie, perform the action, and then you have to go back into the lead Monstie menu to switch it back. With the new radial menu, it should be a lot less annoying, and that is what I'm hoping for. For example, what if the game auto-equipped the right Monstie when you are approaching an obstacle instead of having to manually approve it? That would be pretty seamless. And maps. Oh boy, the maps. Stories 2's quest markers could be a bit vague, and it was a bit easy to get lost or miss objectives sometimes. You had to manually enable a side quest objective rather than having it automatically enable. For example, Stories 3 could have a breadcrumb trail option. You know, a line on the ground that kind of leads you to your objective. Veterans who want to explore can of course turn it off, but it would help newcomers and prevent frustration. One more thing. Minimap customization. Let me zoom in and out a bit better, so that way it's not just 2 specific levels of zoom, but let me zoom in and out smoothly as I want. Small change, big impact. But let's also talk about the grind, because this is where Stories 2 could feel pretty tedious at times. Rare materials for crafting required farming the same monster over and over, hoping for that, 1 or 2% drop rate. And when you needed 5 of that material or more, it could be exhausting. Stories 3 needs to respect player time. First, increase the drop rates for story critical items. If I need something to progress, don't make me fight the same monsters 20 times. Second, add a material exchange system. Let me trade a bunch of common materials for rarer ones at a reasonable rate. And third, implement a pity system. After so many attempts, guarantee the drop. This is a standard in modern games, and it prevents the frustration of bad RNG. Experience and leveling is somewhat another pain point. In Stories 2, if you wanted to bench a Monstie for a while, it wouldn't gain levels unless you use the expedition system, and then you'd have to grind it back up if you ever wanted to use it again. Stories 3 could have a shared experience option. Give all Monsties a portion of the XP. Maybe put a focus on your party, but have your entire stables have a little bit of passive gain, so it's not just 0. And bottle cap system, they were these special currencies for rare items from MeLink's merchants, but they were not so rare late game, but they were pretty rare early game. So allow people to get a more reliable source of bottle caps early to mid game, so that way they can start getting some more useful items. I shouldn't have to save up for, multiple play sessions to potentially buy 1 piece of gear early to mid game. The goal here is simple. Let me play the game, but not grind for dozens and hundreds of hours. Progression should feel rewarding, not like a second job. Finally, let's talk about accessibility and options, because this is how you make a game feel welcoming to everyone. Stories 2 had 1 difficulty setting. That was it. But players have different skill levels and preferences. Stories 3 should have an easy, normal, and hard mode. Maybe even a hardcore mode so you can do like a Nuzlocke challenge. Let me adjust individual settings maybe. That would be great for accessibility, reducing enemy aggression a little bit, maybe increasing or reducing damage you take or receive. Just accessibility options for single player. Cutscenes are another big one. In Stories 2, some cutscenes may have been unskippable. It's been years since I've played through the story, which is fine on your first playthrough, but if I'm replaying the game, or if I just want to get straight to the gameplay, let me skip them, or at least fast forward some of the dialogue. Character customization in Stories 2 was functional, but limited. You could customize body type, hairstyle, skin tone, eye color, and you had the ability to change your hairstyle and makeup in the pregame and via your house. But players want more variety, especially for hairstyles and face options. Stories 3 should expand upon these options with more hairstyles, face types, and skin tones across all categories. The bigger opportunity is equipment customization. Stories 2 did have layered armor, which was great for separating your appearance from stats. But Stories 3 also needs layered weapons, just like the main line games. The bigger opportunity is equipment customization. Stories 2 did have layered armor, which was great for separating its appearance from stats. But Stories 3 needs layered weapons as well. Let me make my greatsword look like any other greatsword I've crafted, regardless of the stats. Fashion is endgame, as a lot of people will say, and weapon appearance matters. A full transmog system for both armor and weapons would let players express their style without compromising their builds, something the Monster Hunter community is able to do in the mainline games, but not in Stories. And for accessibility features, colorblind modes are a must. Adjustable text size is a must. Remappable controls is a must. And maybe audio cues for visual indicators for people that are hard of hearing or hard of vision. These aren't just nice to haves. They will make the game much more playable for people who might otherwise not be able to play the game. Monster Hunter can be intimidating for newcomers, but Stories 3 has the chance to be the perfect entry point into the Monster Hunter universe if it's designed with accessibility in mind. Make it welcoming, make it customizable, and make it for everyone. Those are the quality of life changes that I would think would make Monster Hunter Stories 3 incredible. But I know I didn't cover everything. What frustrates you the most about Stories 2 that you hope gets fixed in Stories 3? Drop a comment below and let's discuss. And if you want more Stories 3 coverage leading up to launch, make sure that you're subscribed. I've got a bunch of videos planned. Next up, we'll be comparing some Stories 2 and Stories 3 with information that we know about for sure in Stories 3 to see what's actually changing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.